On September 11th, 2001, an unparalleled act of violence stunned the nation. 4 commercial airliners were hijacked by the terrorist group Al-Qaeda in a coordinated attack against the United States. Planes were flown into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. A third was heading to Washington, D.C., but crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers overpowered the hijackers. At 9:37 a.m., the 4th plane, American Airlines Flight 77, slammed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. We remember the day as 9/11. The deadliest terrorist attack in history killed 2,997 and injured more than 25,000 people, including first responders. At the Pentagon alone, 184 people were killed. As our nation grieved, communities of all kinds came together to rebuild and to heal. We vowed never to forget the lives we had lost and the heroic actions of first responders and other community members. 2 decades later, we still remember.
Well, it was a Tuesday morning, and we had our Arlington Public Schools had our weekly leadership team meeting every Tuesday morning.
On my display was a little note at the top that said, "Airplane hits World Trade Center." Nothing. There are no links back then, hyperlinks to CNN or anything like that. So I kept on, hitting it, nothing. And I didn't feel too concerned because my parents told me back in the 30s a sightseeing plane hit the Empire State Building. And I thought, well, maybe it was just something like that, a plane getting too close.
My day started on September 11th working at GW Hospital. I work in the emergency room there, and we actually were in a training conference to prepare for a likely terrorist attack that was, they were concerned about for the World Bank protests that were going to be happening several weeks down the road. And we had just finished that meeting, and I returned down to the ER, and I heard someone in the waiting room mention they'd seen on the TV that a plane hit the building in New York.
We were originally scheduled to come in a little bit early because we had a motorcade detail that we were supposed to do. I was still at home when the first plane had struck up in New York and decided to come in a little bit earlier, just in case things were going to escalate here as far as a security posture. And then on my way in is when I heard that the Pentagon had been struck.
When the plane hit the Pentagon, it became bigger than life.
And I remember being in the emergency room, and a couple DC fire medic units had just dropped off patients, and they're hearing things on their radios, and all of a sudden they're just hurrying out the door. And I asked them, I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "There's a plane down on the mall." And I said, "Okay." And then I heard another one say, "There's an explosion down at the State Department," which was only about 4 blocks down the street from our hospital. And so it was really crazy. Within minutes, people were leaving the city. And I looked out the door, the emergency room, and there was literally, rush hour, like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's, in the morning, everybody's trying to leave the city.
We had a guy who was stationed in our office. He was going to be moving to San Diego. Our headquarters is in San Diego, an SES. And he ran out of his office and he yelled, "They blew up the Pentagon." And we ran to that side of the building. And by the time we got to that side of the building, all we saw was a big black plume of smoke.
My daughter kept calling me during the day, and she kept saying, "Mom, I can't get hold of Dad. I can't get hold of Dad." And I said to her, "The day is beautiful. Knowing your father, he found somebody, he slugged home, found somebody to give him a ride home. And he's outside mowing the grass. So when you get off work, you can go check, and I bet you'll find him there." And when she got to the house, she called me and she said, "Mom, he's not here." So right there and then I knew something had gone astray.
So I immediately came to the station, put on my uniform, and got on my motorcycle and went down to the Pentagon. And my first memory of that is I was coming down Route 110, and before I obviously can see all the smoke, but I remember I can smell a cross between concrete and kerosene, which was the jet fuel.
After the initial impact, firefighters from around the region and beyond flooded into Arlington to assist at the Pentagon and at the stations abandoned by those working at the scene.
People don't realize this, but for the first, 4 or 5 days, the person in charge of the Pentagon site where the plane hit the building was the fire chief of Arlington County.
The Arlington fire chief helped to organize the first responders at the scene as they treated survivors and worked to put out the fires. For days, firefighters and emergency responders continued to work to make the building safe and search for the deceased under the rubble.
We got there, the evening of 9/11, and as night fell, we were asked to move Light and Air 103 to the side of the Pentagon where the aircraft impacted the building, and we had one of the few Light and Air units that were in the area, so we got a spot fairly close up front. We put up the light tower. We set up what lighting that we had, and at that point we filled as many cylinders as we could until our system ran out, and primarily we were providing lighting. And once we got our light set up, then we were there just for support. We were shuttling equipment. We were getting grabbed to go help somebody do this, help somebody do that. So we provided primarily a support function.
So our facilities guys are over there helping. Our transportation, we had buses available and ready to bring the crew that was over at the Pentagon to a shelter that we set up at Jefferson, although hardly anybody came because nobody wanted to leave. They stayed double, triple shifts. It was impressive.
My initial impulse was to keep schools going because we know that many of the parents don't work in Arlington, they work across the river, and that they were going to have a terrible time getting back.
Here, you could see out the window the streets, Wilson Boulevard. I don't think there were any cars on Wilson Boulevard. There were people. It was full of people because the bridges were closed, and I'm not sure if Metro was even working, but people were walking home quickly, running, sprinting, whatever they could do.
Our principals, I thought, were magnificent. Just did a really great job of communicating with parents who were concerned, who were calling in, coming by, trying to find parents that they couldn't find at the same time. We had one principal at the Hoffman Boston Elementary School.
I wrote a little note and I, duplicated it and cut it and had my secretaries walk around the school telling the teachers to get all their materials together. And we were going to go down to the basement and we were going to probably spend the day there. While we were down there, some of the younger teachers had their cell phones and they heard from other people about the terrorist airplanes hitting the towers, and some of them happened to have people at the towers. So they were kind of in a corner crying and talking, and I went up and I told them, I said, you guys, we have got to, keep our act together. And so then I went back upstairs and wrote a short little memo that said, our kids are our first priority right now. I recognize some of you know people, at the Twin Towers, but we need to, and I think the Pentagon's been hit, but we need to kind of keep, the day just going smooth for the kids as best as possible.
That day, as I said, parents were just rushing to get their children. They wanted to be with their children. The next day, we didn't have school. We closed schools, and that was the best decision ever because parents didn't want to send their kids away again. They wanted to stay together. And we needed a little time to figure out how to be helpful.
What became a goal was to take everyone's need to participate and make a difference and feel better and feel like they were contributing and create some positive, useful outlets for it.
One of our senior staff, bless his heart, had a connection with a professional child psychologist, counselor kind of person. And we all met, all the senior level principals, everybody, we all met together that day. And she talked about things to do to support the community when you go back, lists of ideas to share with parents and to share with teachers. You know, how do you say to the kids the next day? Well, that was interesting.
The community support was overwhelming in such a good way. And it was people who would knock on the door and deliver cookies and food, just all sorts of great things like that. But really what was most touching was you would get a folder full of thank you notes from the schools. You would get pictures. You could tell it was all the way from the really small kids with little crayon drawings and and notes from some of the older kids, and you would get just random thank you notes in the mailbox. It was touching, and I think somewhere around here we still have a box of those tucked away. I don't know I think if you'd go through those, you'd get probably a little bit emotional.
For months after, I couldn't buy lunch anywhere, just because people were very generous and appreciative for what we were doing.
Dropping off food, that's the fastest way to a firefighter's heart is probably cookies and cakes.
There was an enormous reservoir of people's goodwill. You have a crisis and generally people come together. They want to do good. They want to help. They have some compassion. And Arlingtonians were no different.
They wanted to give blood. They wanted to donate whatever they could. They wanted to volunteer, help at the shelter, which we didn't need because hardly anybody came.
And so a variety of groups began to, I believe, doing some knitting or crocheting or knitting or creating some products for people.
I had a lady, her name is Christine Broach, and she is from Arlington. And she made this beautiful, beautiful Afghan for in memory of those who were lost in the tragedy.
Neighborhoods in Arlington are quite robust, and some of them are very strong and connected. So they get their listservs going, or they talk among themselves, and some have a bonfire here or a memorial service over here. They'll kind of figure out their own way of doing something together. And mostly it's just about being together to be able to share the experience.
When I buried Bob, a lot of my kids and their parents were on the hills, right there, little by the highway, with little flags waving, and a lot of people all the way into Arlington. So it was very moving.
And then we had a huge community event a couple of weeks later at W&L.
With music, again, community leaders speaking, to in a way to commemorate those who had fallen, and to applaud the work of the community and the work of the support for the community.
In a very short period of time, we organized, created a program for it, designed it, got the word out, had some of the regional folks here, but it was largely for Arlingtonians.
It was packed. Everybody wanted to be there. We had one of the anchors from Channel 4 was kind of the MC, who had been a native Arlingtonian. And just it was speaker after speaker, and then some music groups and high school groups. It was a time to come together and to appreciate the spirit of community.
Arlington officials convened community and faith leaders to develop a message of unity to address a national rise in incidents of hate toward Muslims. At the Remembrance event, children from Randolph Elementary School shared thanks to first responders in the languages of their families from all over the world.
Hi, my name is Liliana Smith, and I am in the 5th grade at Randolph School. In Honduras, where my dad was born, we say gracias para ayudar los otros in Arlington.
My name is Abdul Rahim Qureshi. I am in the 5th grade in Randolph Elementary in Arlington. Where my parents were born is the country called Pakistan. In Pakistan, this is how we would say, thank you for keeping Arlington safe. Shukriya, Arlington की हिफाजत करने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
Hello, my name is Gideon Zodu, and I am in the 5th grade at Randolph Elementary School in Ethiopia, where my parents were born. We say, but Arlington and Badana Nasilit Abikachu in Namasaganalin.
Honestly, the outpouring, the number of people that came, the people that enjoyed and needed to be there in community and in solidarity and feel one another's, emotions was really a very powerful evening.
And it really was kind of an uplifting community event. And I thought went a long way toward helping people feel not good about, but at least better about what had gone on.
It was a valuable experience, a valuable thing to look forward to come together, and I think it proved to be the case.
There was, there was a desire to really honor the people that had passed away on that day, and so there was just a concerted effort, I think, across the fire service and the police departments to really recognize the 9/11 responders, and that took its form initially in decals and emblems that were put on fire trucks and other emergency vehicles, and then it continued into things like the 5K race that we still have to this day to remember 9/11, so that we don't forget the people who gave their lives and the people who died, civilians included, on 9/11.
The Arlington Police, Fire, Sheriff, and ECC 9/11 Memorial Race has been a valued annual event of remembrance in Arlington. The race draws around 3,000 participants each September. Since its inception in 2002, the run has raised over $800,000 for charities focused on the healing of military personnel and civilians affected by the war on terrorism and the September 11th attacks. Beginning at the DoubleTree Hotel in Crystal City, runners pass through the Pentagon grounds on the 5-kilometer route. At the Pentagon, the National 9/11 Pentagon Memorial offers another safe space to remember the victims of the attack. It is located on the south side of the building and faces the wall struck by Flight 77. Visitors can see where the plane hit between the first and second floors, and looking nearby can see a charred black stone rescued from the wreckage and set into the new foundation. On this lawn, the activity of the day was the most frantic, but now it's the most peaceful. The memorial features 184 illuminated benches, each engraved with the name of a victim. Those dedicated to the 59 passengers and crew aboard the plane are oriented so the viewer faces the path the plane traveled. The 125 benches honoring the military and civilian personnel killed at the Pentagon are positioned so the visitor faces the Pentagon's south facade. The benches are arranged in order of age, from the youngest victim, 3-year-old Dana Falkenberg, to the eldest, 71-year-old John Yemnicki. In time for the 20th anniversary of 9/11, a new memorial is being built at Fire Station 5 in South Arlington.
My name is Megan Maisel. I'm from Girl Troop 164, and for my Eagle Scout project, I am building a 9/11 memorial. For my design, I wanted to make it kind of unique. I thought since it's part of the Twin Towers and that's already one place I was struck in by the planes, let's put a Pentagon-shaped walkway around it to show the other sites that got hit. And then in the middle is going to be 3 flag poles, a flag from each site. So Arlington, New York, and Shanksville flag. This is a I-beam from the Twin Tower. The New York department gave it to Arlington in like a kind of a sentimental way because they got a piece of the Pentagon and we got a piece of the Twin Tower. For Arlington, it's important because this fire department was the first engine to respond to the plane crash. So to them, it means a lot. And so I think it's very nice and very sentimental to build a memorial just for them.
How do the events after 9/11, how do I feel about it when you compare them to World War II or the Korean War or the Vietnam War? I think that or the financial crises of 1929 or the 80s or the 90s, all these things we seem to, with time, forget about the possibility that it can happen.
We need to be humble and recognize that it can happen. And so it's important to realize that. It's important to both cherish every moment that you have, and realize that things may happen that will be out of our control, and we need to be prepared for that.
When so many people want to pour their positive energy and pour their souls into making things better, you really have a community that sort of by its nature has probably a higher capacity for resilience than most.
I saw a lot of hope in the response from people across the community. As much as people can be divided at times, people really unified, and there was an enormous sense of patriotism. I saw more flags flying, American flags flying, in the weeks after 9/11, I think, that I'd ever seen in my life.
The strength of that response, the resilience that folks displayed, and essentially the tolerance displayed that didn't always go that way in all communities was heartening.
I think Reed mentioned that the logo says never forget, and maybe people are starting to forget a little bit. As bad as it was, for the world in the days and weeks that, people were flying flags and people were more likely to, give each other a hug than, give them a scowl. We need a little bit more of that these days.
Oh, beautiful, for heroes prove in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness.